channel for yet another sponsored video. Today's video is sponsored by HelloFresh. HelloFresh is a meal kit delivery service that gives you mouth-watering seasonal recipes and fresh pre-measured ingredients delivered right to your door. HelloFresh makes cooking at home fun and more easy and affordable, honestly. HelloFresh offers many recipes to choose from each week to help you break from your recipe rut. They have many different options of meal kits as well, offering family-friendly, calorie-smart, pescatarian or vegetarian options every week. Plus, every recipe is packed with fresh produce sourced directly from farmers near you. HelloFresh's pre-packaged proportions and ingredients mean there's less prep and less wasted food for you. Personally, I work up north a lot, and sometimes I'm only in town for 5 days or so, and there's nothing better than getting home and being able to spend my time at home or with my friends, because I'm not running around going to get groceries, going to pick things up that I may have forgotten, or, having to come up with creative ideas for what it is I want to eat. I can pick it out, and it's delivered at my door as I arrive for my 1 week or two that I'm actually even in the city. So it's a really great service for myself. I've had amazing experiences with it. Honestly, it's delicious. All of the meals are fantastic, and there's so many different options. So do yourself a favor. Go to HelloFresh.com and use code ANGELASMR14 for 14 free meals plus shipping. That's HelloFresh.com and use code ANGELASMR14 to get 14 free meals plus free shipping. Thank you so much to HelloFresh for this sponsorship, and thank you guys for being here today. Now, let's get into today's video. Hello. My name is Angel, and welcome back to my channel for day 12 of the 13 days to Halloween countdown. We're almost at the end, and I hope that you've been enjoying everything that has come your way these last 13 days. It has definitely been a lot of fun and frustration making all of these, but I hope that in the end you guys enjoy it as much as I have. Now, for today's video, we're going to be going into A Nightmare on Elm Street, kind of a little bit of its plot lines and what inspired it, and if this was inspired at all by a true story, which, if you really think of it, how could it be right? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, before we dive into it, let's get ourselves nice and comfortable. Grab yourselves a nice cozy blanket, a cigarette. I don't know, I'm trying to change it up. I've done a lot of the same ones That actually sounded pretty good. Cheers. Oh, that is so good. Okay, so is this a real story? And if so, what's it based on? What's it based on, even if it's loosely? Well, honestly, how could it be based on a real story, right? A Nightmare on Elm Street, the plot that follows it is following 4 teenagers living on one street in a fictitious town in Springwood, Ohio, where a monstrous spirit of a child murderer invades kids and kills them in their dreams, and then they die in reality. So the spirit in this movie is a bladed, leather-gloved killer named Fred or Freddy Krueger, whom seeks revenge on the children of the parents who were responsible for his death or his demise. So how the hell is that? How could that be real, right? Like a spirit haunting you in your dreams, and you wake up and you die the way that you died in your dreams, you know? It's just, it's a little crazy. It's a little crazy, but let's go into the plot line and then get to everything. So, it's March of 1981 in the film A Nightmare on Elm Street, where Tina Gray awakens from a nightmare wherein a disfigured man wearing bladed fixed gloves attacks her in a boiler room, and her mother points out 4 mysterious slashes on her nightgown when she is awoken. It's a bit creepy, very Annabelle, honestly. If you guys, I reference Annabelle in a few of these, but Annabelle, that happened too in the real story. The man was sleeping in a dream he was attacked and woke up with scratches on him. It's kind of similar to that. But it was the following morning, and Tina's best friend Nancy Thompson and Nancy's boyfriend Glenn Lance console her of her terrifying nightmare. Because, she probably felt like an insane person. I would, and especially because she really thought it was real, because it was that intense, right? So, the two stay at Tina's house, when Tina's mother is out of town. But Tina's boyfriend, Rod Lane, interrupt their sleepover. When Tina falls asleep, she dreams of the disfigured man once again, chasing her. And Rod is awoken by Tina's thrashing and sees her dragged and fatally slashed by some unseen force. Could you imagine? That is very paranormal activity, and I'm not here for it. So, this forces him to flee as Nancy and Glenn awaken to find Tina bloodied and dead. Which I get it. I'm sure he was probably like, yeah, there's no way they're all gonna think I am crazy. I gotta get out of here, because there's no way they're gonna think it was him, right? So the next day, Nancy's father, Don Thompson, arrests him despite his pleas of innocence. Well, of course I would too. As a functioning adult, I'd be like, this kid is a psycho. At school, Nancy then falls asleep sheets around his neck, staging it as a suicide via hanging. At Rod's funeral, Nancy's parents become worried when she describes her dreams. Her mother, Marge, takes her to a sleep disorder clinic, where in a dream, Nancy grabs the man's fedora with the name Fred Krueger written inside and pulls it into the real world. That's pretty wild. I'm like, ooh, do I watch it? I have before, but so long ago I don't remember much. So after barricading the house, Marge explains that Krueger was an insane child murderer who was released on a technicality and then burned alive by parents living on their street. Oh my goodness. Seeking vigilante justice. Nancy realizes that Krueger, now a vengeful ghost, is killing her and her friends out of revenge and to satiate his psychopathic needs. Nancy tries to call Glenn to warn him, but his father prevents her from speaking to him. Glenn falls asleep and sure enough is killed. Now alone, Nancy puts Marge to sleep and asks Dawn, who is across the street investigating Glenn's death, to break into the house in 20 minutes. Nancy rigs booby traps around the house and grabs Krueger out of the dream and into the real world. The booby traps affect Krueger enough that Nancy can light him on fire and lock him into the basement. Nancy rushes to the door for help, and the police arrive to find that Krueger has escaped from the basement. Nancy and Dawn go upstairs to find a burning Krueger smothering Marge in her bedroom. After Dawn extinguishes the fire, Krueger and Marge vanish into the bed. When Dawn leaves the room, Krueger rises from behind Nancy. Realizing that Krueger is powered by his victim's fear, she calmly turns her back to him, and he evaporates when he attempts to lunge at her. How would you suddenly be like, he's powered by my fear? That's far-fetched. I mean, all of it is. But, like, how do you come to that realization? Really? Anyway, that's the part that I'm like, God, it's enough. That's stupid. That's really funny. Okay. Nancy steps outside into a bright and foggy morning where all of her friends and mother are still alive. Nancy gets into Glenn's convertible to go to school, and then the top suddenly comes down and locks them in the car as it drives uncontrollably down the street. 3 girls in white dresses playing jump rope are then heard chanting Krueger's nursery rhyme as Marge is grabbed by Krueger through the front door window. Ooh. Creepy, right? Now, the film's villain, Freddy Krueger, is actually drawn from the director Wes Craven's early life. Hi. One night, a young Craven had seen an elderly man walking on the side path outside the window of his home. The man stopped to glance at a startled Craven and walked off. Okay, so he was scared of an old guy, sure. This served as inspiration for Krueger. Like, how scary. A guy looked at me and he was creepy. Well, initially, Freddy Krueger was actually intended to be why does this keep falling out of my ear? A child molester, but Craven eventually characterized him as a child murderer because he wanted to avoid being accused of exploiting a spat of highly publicized child molestation cases that were occurring in California comic character Plastic Man, and Craven chose to make his sweater red and green after an article in 1982's Scientific America that said these two colors were the most clashing to the human retina, which is quite neat. Still not a lot on if this was actually a real story or based off of a real story. You know, Chucky had some sort of origins, Annabelle, a lot of things. And although he was a creation of a lot of things, there was one thing that actually did seem to happen that kind of put all of this together. So Craven wanted to make Krueger different from other horror movie villains in the era. A lot of killers wore masks like Leatherface, Mike Myers, and Jason. But he wanted his villain to have a mask but be able to talk, taunt, and threaten. So he thought of him being burned or scarred. He also thought the killer should use something other than a knife, as it was too common. So he thought, what about a glove with steak knives? For a time, Craven had considered a sickle for the weapon of choice, but around the third or fourth drafts of the script, they landed on this. But what was the main inspiration, besides minor elements of this story, was actually based on an article that circulated in LA Times about a family who had moved to the United States from Cambodia. So this is where a lot of the storyline was created, and it's really creepy. You'll see. So things were fine, and then suddenly this young family's son was having disturbing and terrorizing nightmares. The son has told his parents he was afraid that if he'd slept, that this thing that was chasing him would get him, and that he would eventually die, and not just in his dreams, but in real life. So after these disturbing, terrorizing dreams stayed for so long, he decided to try and stay awake for days at a time. When he'd finally fallen asleep, his parents thought this crisis was over. But it was then that they'd heard screams in the middle of the night. And sure enough, by the time they'd gotten to him, he was dead. So literally, he lived his worst fear from his dreams. I know. And this was a real thing that was circulating the newspapers back in the day that Wes Craven remembers reading about. He died in the middle of a nightmare. And here was a youngster having a vision of a horror that everyone older than him told him that was just in his head, and they were denying. And it had actually came true. And that became the central line of A Nightmare on Elm Street. So there's a lot of different elements to it, and that's kind of the history of Freddy Krueger, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and the true story, really, that kind of gave Wes Craven a premise to go off of. But it's interesting because no one knows what happened with that family. It's quite bizarre. Like, did he have a heart attack? Like, I want to know what happened, or what they said the cause of death was, you know? Because that is wild to me. If that happened to my son, and I kept being like, you're crazy, it's all in your head, go to sleep, I would feel horrible. Like that, those poor parents, I can't even imagine. Yeah, so incredibly bizarre, and a very creative, I must say, character that kind of shows, you know, a lot of terrifying things. As Wes Craven said, the worst of adulthood. It's wild. So, what did you guys think about today's story? So